world will never be the same. We believe the game, cause nothing stops the train. Hop on board or get out the way and hear what I'm about to say. Son, the corner's yet to run, but it's never been this good, and the best is yet to come. Number go up isn't just another meme, it's a way to live and be optimistic about the scene. So orange laser beams rising up from underneath the steam, and piles of broken dreams and debt that's bursting at the seams. Satoshi made a motion and the world is saying second. Owning Bitcoin is the lesson, and I'm like a broken record. There is no better vector or sector for most investors to bet against the never-ending spending while a debtor. So catch me on the TV, dripping energy like Evie, taking on the world while making every single thing look easy. I'm walking down on VC, only hoodie on the block. Cypherpunks are at the gate, and they're never gonna stop. Tell the others they are bust, cause there is no second fast. Leave the haters in the dust, and there is no second fast. Get on the fastest horse, cause there is no second fast. Get your head into the game, cause there is no time to rest, and there is no second fast. Welcome to Galaxy Brains.
An infinite amount of cash.
I'm your host, Alex Thorn.
The U.S. banking system is sound and resilient.
Bitcoin made a new all-time high.
If you're not long, you're short.
Satoshi's going to come on there, laugh hysterically, go quiet. All Bitcoin's going to be erased.
Bitcoin's the best crypto out there.
Bitcoin is going to zero.
Welcome back to Galaxy Brains. As always, I'm your host, Alex Thorn, head of firm-wide research at Galaxy. Bitcoin not zero, and we have a great episode for you this week. American Hodl, well-known gentleman and Bitcoin bull, is joining us to talk about really just all things Bitcoin in the future, what the future might look like, and if Bitcoin is held by nation states, how Bitcoin will help us become a spacefaring species, and a bunch more. We'll also talk with our good friend Bimnet Abibi from Galaxy Trading, as always. And before we get to that, I need to remind you to please refer to the link to the disclaimer in the podcast notes, and note that none of the information in this podcast constitutes investment advice or an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by Galaxy or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. We are entering a new era, and I'm not going to delay any further, so let's hop right into it. Let's go now to our friend Bimnet Abibi from Galaxy Trading. As always, Bimnet, welcome to Galaxy Brains.
Thanks for having me.
What a fun time. It continues to be an exciting time. Bitcoin made a new all-time high today and yesterday. We're down a little bit from it, but we're down to 93.7.
I know. God forbid.
What's it feel like to you in the market?
It feels like there is maximum euphoria. I think most folks that are in Bitcoin are pretty stretched in terms of their positioning.
Something like 99.5% of all Bitcoin UTXOs are in profit.
Yes.
So
everybody's in profit. And the main story really is with respect to Michael Saylor. Obviously, they are buying a ton of Bitcoin.
He's ahead of schedule even from what he said.
He's
just
way ahead of schedule, and his the stock has been trading really well. And it looks like he's going to be able to do more.
Yeah.
And more in a quicker manner as well.
That's what he's telegraphing. It's what he's saying. It's he's all over the internet.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We ran this too, not to none of this is investment advice, but MicroStrategy I think is the top risk adjusted. Best Sharp ratio.
I think it's got a Sharp around like
over
6.
4. Over 4 is what we saw, but that's just year to date. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's like the best performing stock out there. It's large, traded like $15 billion.
MicroStrategy
yesterday.
owns more than 1.5% of all the Bitcoin today.
Yeah, and that's a great thing because they don't sell.
Yeah.
And so, I think there's a lot of folks that are paying attention to the Saylor story and the MicroStrategy story. Bitcoin has broken all-time highs. It's seeing follow through. Clearly, the Trump administration is much more pro-crypto than the last administration.
Mm-hmm.
And the officials that have been appointed and the folks that influence him the greatest seem to be folks that are invested in the, not the success per se, but in the legal viability and pathway and clarity that crypto really needs.
That's right.
And so, I think things are looking really good for Bitcoin. I would just caution that there is definitely resistance at 100K. We see it in the order books. It's a nice big round number. And so, if folks are a bit cautious, I definitely think that 100K level should hold on the first test at the very least.
Yeah.
And subsequently thereafter, we'll see what happens. I do think you're probably talking about a Bitcoin price north of 100K for 2025.
Yeah.
But inside of 2024, I think breaking that 100K level is going to be challenging.
Yep. I think that's right. I think obviously on a longer time frame, like I think the nothing stops this train. It feels like we're going much higher. I think you see this priced in the Bitcoin ETF options launched and tons of volume around the 100K calls and on higher strikes than
absolutely.
that. So people are anticipating higher prices, but yeah, it does feel like you can't what more positive news can we really get at this point?
No, absolutely.
So it's kind of hard to see what,
There's a lot of optimism baked in.
Yeah, there is. There
yes.
is. There is.
And
so, yeah.
and that's, if you look at the traditional markets, right, stocks ripped right after the Trump election on hopes of, deregulation and tax cuts.
Yep.
And they've reverted back a ton since. And so, when you have crowded positioning, that leads to some vulnerability. And so, I definitely think that there's some, signs that are flashing a bit red at the moment, basis being one of them. So we've seen elevated funding levels for a while now in crypto, and, spots at the dead highs. Vols, longer dated stuff starting to pick up a little bit as well with some of the, the options activity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, can we also talk about how we now have options?
I know.
Publicly traded options, no credit, OCC credit risk.
It's crazy because, Galaxy, one of the biggest options dealers in the world, but over the counter only does, and us and our competitors in that market only service institutional investors, really.
Yeah.
American retail investors make up 44% of all equity options activity. So almost half. Shout out to Kelly Greer for pulling that stat. They've had no way to do options on Bitcoin at all in the U.S. in general.
Absolutely.
There's CME options, right? But that's, I think, also basically institutional only.
The CME is institutional only. You can buy
there
options
was Ledger
on the
X.
ETF that holds the futures.
The futures ETFs had options.
Yes.
That was the only real way.
The only real way.
But now it's like, I mean,
direct access.
You're probably going to get these in like fintech apps, like Robinhood will probably be adding this. I would just assume, right? They do tons of business on, right? They were huge on meme coins. Dogecoin at one point was like most of their revenue, or at least half of their revenue back in 21.
Absolutely.
They love right, all that GameStop trading was on Robinhood, a lot of it, right? So I think that's not even, I don't even think that's the biggest story about the ETF options, but it's a big part of it. Retail can trade these options now.
No, and retail, as you correctly highlighted, has a huge influence on this market. And so I think it's fundamentally, it is a positive catalyst for Bitcoin because it also introduces hedging capabilities for U.S. investors. They can sell calls, they can buy puts.
It makes it more attractive to hold the ETF.
Absolutely.
Also, it reduces volatility or lets them take bigger position sizes because they can hedge and stuff, right?
Correct. And it enhances liquidity generally because the options market makers have to buy and sell a ton more spot. So the market becomes more liquid from a spot standpoint when you have the options. And, more folks will look at it because they can hedge stuff and speculate a little bit easier. So yeah, this is a very positive, development for the market, and I think you're correctly right in highlighting Robinhood activities because, I think last week they recently allowed, tokens that they had been more cautious on to list on their platform, and so with this upcoming change in the SEC, I think you'll start to see more tokens kind of being listed. By Coinbase, by Robinhood, and other exchanges that offer access to retail. Mm-hmm. So all in all, I mean, these are very healthy, constructive developments. I think Bitcoin would certainly be higher right now, though, if you didn't have some of these geopolitical tensions going on in the market.
Yep.
I think those are, front of mind for a lot of investors right now. Basically the latest is over the past 2 days, Ukraine has launched long-range missiles into Russia, and Russia has responded by being like, "This is not good," and the nuclear
threat. They updated their nuclear usage threat and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, and there were some headlines out overnight being like, Putin's open to a ceasefire if you draw the borders, as they're currently constructed, et cetera. And so I think there's some openness to negotiating with the U.S. once the Trump administration is in.
Yeah.
But for the time being, the Ukrainians are escalating.
Yeah, which
And
is rational, unfortunately, because when you have, I think that the Trump team has pretty explicitly implied. I know that's explicit, implicit. That they would work towards a negotiated settlement, and so now you've got like a ticking clock, right? And
Yes.
you effectively want in any sort of negotiation to go in with the strongest hand possible.
Absolutely.
So if they
So
assume
the
that
game
like
theory,
day one,
yeah.
So you could expect some, I would say, heightened tensions between
No.
now and the Trump administration taking office.
No, absolutely. And you're seeing that take hold in currency markets pretty aggressively. Euro is back down to almost 105, the figure, which is like crisis, like
near
initial Russian invasion,
one
like
being
euro
parity
through
with the
parity.
dollar?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So you're 5% away from parity.
Wow.
With the dollar, and so like that's a big deal.
That shows a lot of concern
A
over there.
ton of concern.
Yeah.
In that market, and so.
Well, keep your eye on the geopolitics, and don't everybody stay safe out there. I guess
No.
we're getting a crazy, volatile. I mean, it's vol up, spot up is the regime we've been in since the election. But we'll keep following it.
Brilliant.
Bimnet Abibi from Galaxy Trading, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Let's go now to our guest, American Hodl, my friend. Welcome to Galaxy Brains.
Very good to be here. I feel like we've been meaning to do this for a while, but we haven't done it yet. But we always are seeing each other in person at conferences and etc.
Yeah, it's the best. We had a great time at Peter McCormack's conference, Cheat Code, earlier this year. It was like I was singing like American Werewolf in Paris. We were kind of like American werewolves, like bumbling around the streets of Bedford, UK. I think people were like, "What is going on here, dude?"
That was amazing. I love wandering around Europe with other Americans and just looking down our nose in disgust at everything. Like, what is this? This
I know.
place is in today,
This place was good like hundreds of years ago. It's been hundreds of years. Not that this is the purpose of the pod, but the euro right now is almost like heading towards dollar parity. It's doing terrible. It's down 0.5% today. It's crazy.
That's crazy. Wasn't it like I don't know, 15% higher or something at one point? It's down all the way back to parity.
Yeah, I think right now they're like concerned in Europe about the Ukraine-Russia situation, knowing that President-elect Trump's likely to force a settlement. So both sides are probably going to be super aggressive now until then to try to like increase their bargaining position. But there was all that stuff. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. Hodl and I think I first met Hodl virtually on Clubhouse. But I had heard there was a great episode you did. I think most of us, I first heard of you when you did this great, like frankly famous episode of Tales from the Crypt with Marty and Matt. Like it was like 2019 maybe or something. I forget.
That was a legendary episode. Yeah, it was September-ish of 2019, and I flew into Brooklyn where they were doing the show back then at that time. And it seemed like a big deal to like fly for a podcast. I'm flying out to go on this like crazy niche small weirdo Bitcoin Joe Rogan, which is like kind of what it was at the time. But like to me, it was the most important podcast in the world, and all of us, hardcore Bitcoiners were listening to it. And so I flew out there, did that thing with those guys, and I remember reveling in the feeling of being right when the whole world was telling us we were wrong. So the Bitcoin price was it had gotten beaten down tremendously at that point. It was probably somewhere around like $5,000 or $6,000. It had gone to 3,200 at the lows. And then we were climbing our way back, but slowly. And it still seemed like a secret that, it was only us, the crazy guys who stuck around after 2017 who seemed to know what was going on. So that podcast was kind of like reveling in that moment.
We can revel now. I mean, Bitcoin started the year last year, 2023 at 16.5. And as we record this on Wednesday, November 20th, it's 94.5. So that's a big jump. Big jump.
Is it not crazy that we're 6% away from $100,000? Does that not seem insane?
Are you even excited about it? Because somebody was asking me here today, like, aren't you like euphoric? And I was like, honestly, I think I'm dead inside at this point. Like, I'm just, it's what we always thought.
It feels like we're owed 100,000 from 2021, and we didn't get it in 21. So like this time, if we would have had $100,000 party in 21, right? Like Michael Saylor throwing $100,000 party. If we would have done that 4 years ago, it would have felt like a celebration. But now it just feels like the kickoff party to the year's event, because I think we all believe that 25 is going to be extremely bullish, and possibly with the red wave and the Trump administration, 26, 27, 28. 28.
Yeah.
Do we just keep going? Yeah.
I think it's very possible. I've sort of been saying like the next, 18 to 24 months, just thinking like then there's maybe a new Congress, but like at least the whole setup is, from a political and policy standpoint, is set for like 2 years, basically.
Well, yeah, one of the things, I mean, me and you talked to the same guys, right? So like one of the things I've been hearing is that the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, the SBR, if it happens, it's going to happen sooner rather than later, which to me signals first year of the Trump presidency. And if it happens during the first year of the Trump presidency, and that coincides with, these very bullish, tailwinds for Bitcoin, like the sky is the limit in terms of price. I mean, we could gap up to $1 million tomorrow, because America is stacking Bitcoin, and they're stacking 1 million plus Bitcoin. That, I mean, we all said this was going to happen, but like, let's be real. We were just nerds in a high school auditorium somewhere saying this was going to happen. And now we're like on the world stage, people are inviting us onto yachts and things like that.
It's crazy, because you're totally right. I mean, even the suggestion that the US might do it, basically every one of our allies and competitors should do something. They'd have to do something. It doesn't really matter if you like it or not. If your top competitor likes it a lot, you better have a strategy, right? It could be anything. Like,
yeah.
you can't
You're on notice. And I also think that there are rumors that someone in the Gulf is going to announce in the next few weeks, and that is either Qatar, UAE, or Saudi. And we're going to find out soon. And apparently they have a 6-figure amount of Bitcoin, so like a MicroStrategy level of Bitcoin. And what does that mean? What does that mean for the petrodollar relationship? What does that mean for geopolitics? What does that mean for global trade? I don't know. But I know that it's going to put pressure on America's politicians to get this SBR rammed through if Saudi announces, or UAE announces, whoever. If the Gulf is doing that over there, like that puts our petrodollar relationship at risk. And so we have to ensure basically that continues.
Yeah, we have to be on the same page. I mean, and those guys are kind of like the new Switzerland, right? Like the Gulf countries are, they straddle east and west, literally, like geographically, but also even like, UAE, those guys deal with China and Iran as well, right? And Russia. Yeah. So like they're kind of like right there in the center now of this, especially energy dominated world. That's crazy. I mean,
something that Michael Saylor said yesterday is that he believes that he has seen sovereign wealth funds buying MSTR now ahead of what they believe is a potential SBR announcement.
Yeah.
And I mean, so if that's true, and that they're already here, like that, I just don't even know what to think if we're at nation state level stacking. It, like, I've thought about the game theory forever, because it's a perfect prisoner's dilemma. And in a prisoner's dilemma, the optimal move is to go first. So as an American, obviously, I want America to go first and bang the trade hard. And I'm just hoping that we have the leadership to do that here in America, because it would be one of the things that sets us up for the next 50, 100 years, and also helps offset our deficit by something like, I've seen estimates like 16 to 20 trillion. That's a crazy chunk out of the deficit, man. We could actually get America prosperous again.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to ignore. I think that's obvious. To me, it's like, I'd be shocked. I agree. It probably should happen fast, because the more you start talking about it, the harder I think it would get for American politicians to do, because it's like I've always said that like every global reserve currency in the history of the world has failed, right? Like that there's only one at a time. And so you'd have to believe in the end of history to think that the dollar will be forever the global reserve. And then you start saying, if you're thinking long term, like, well, if it's not going to be the dollar, what would we want it to be? Well, we definitely don't want it to be like the Chinese renminbi or like the Russian ruble, right? So wouldn't we prefer, if it's not ours, that it's some global decentralized non-sovereign thing, even gold? I mean, but Bitcoin seems to fit. It's just like, we can only, our politicians, our political structure is set up so that like they can only think like a couple years in advance, right? So that's why I think it also, if it happens, has to happen quickly.
Oh, 100%. I think there's a category error here that we all make. I agree with you that all fiat currencies have failed. And because we know that all fiat currencies have failed, Bitcoiners get in the habit of thinking that, Weimar style hyperinflation is just around the corner. It's lurking around the corner at any time. And so we have this word for that, which is hyper Bitcoinization, right? Which is when the world just suddenly wakes up and understands Bitcoin. But hyper Bitcoinization is like a religious rapture, and it's not actually a real concept. The other thing that we've never had is we've never had a world reserve currency that's a fiat currency. So actually, we're in truly uncharted territory here, and we don't know what the game is going to look like. But I think we're starting to see what the game looks like going forward. And it looks like sort of a slow, orderly transition. Like, I hesitate to say that because, I'm a Bitcoiner and I've been with the crazy libertarians for 10 years now. And I kind of believe the Weimar stuff. But then there's another part of me, that the rationalist side, that's going, is this just all working out? Like, we're just slowly and methodically moving the world, transitioning the world to the new digital economy?
Yeah.
It kind of seems that way.
I mean, when you see Larry Fink talk about it, he's been incredibly thoughtful in saying it's not a risk asset, right? It's not, shouldn't be thought of as a risk and growth asset. It's a hedge against debasement. That's what they aggressively pitch this. And I've struggled to make this case for years, like, because, for example, like CPI goes up, but Bitcoin doesn't hedge against that. Well, that's not what we meant. It's like very nuanced, and they're just out here like, right. I think of it more like the monetary supply. Like if you look at like global M2, it looks a little bit better, like reacts to that than the CPI or whatever. And I'm like struggling with these nuances and trying to be like extreme. And they're just out here like pounding the fist, like pounding the table with their fist, saying, no, Bitcoin is an inflation hedge, period.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. Paul Tudor Jones had that framework he came out with in 2020 or 2019.
May 2020.
Bitcoin is the fastest horse in the race. And that is my framework. I think I took that from him. And, when you think about the monetary inflation that's going on. So, Saylor just gave a talk at Cantor recently where he talked about this. And he was like, the world is actually going to look more or less the same. Equities are going to continue increasing. Gold is going to continue increasing. But Bitcoin is going to increase at a much higher rate. I think it was something like 280x he had in his slide, right? So like, okay, equities are going to do like, 6x, and like gold's going to do like 2x. Bitcoin's going to do 280x. So if you are an investor who's aware of this macro trend of, continued monetary inflation forever, which I think we all are at this point, do you want to ride on the slow horse gold? You want to take gold to the prom? No, it's Bitcoin. Like, you want the best bang for your buck in terms of, value accrual.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just the trade is so clear, and God, the other cryptos have been just so wrecked in its wake this year. It's been amazing to watch.
It's kind of beautiful, right? They're all just collapsing down into meme coins, which is it's a self-admission that we're worthless. we're worthless. We suck.
Basically none of the big ideas have happened, right? I mean, there's some DeFi, but it's just crypto money in there, right? It's not like it hasn't permeated. It is that we've been calling it the barbell market. You've got like deep value, long-term store value Bitcoin on one side, and then just like the most vacuous, like speculative trading ever in crypto on the other side.
By the way, this mirrors Weimar a bit, because people who don't know their history, if you haven't read the book When Money Dies, in Weimar, people were gambling on stocks. So that's exactly what's happening now. It's just we have a more pure form of gambling on stocks, and you just buy a picture of a monkey.
Yeah, exactly.
It's actually like in the early days of shitcoins, I used to get upset and angry because shitcoins were lying, and they were saying they were going to displace Bitcoin. I think everyone knows they're not going to displace Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is king. That's clear across the board, right? So I don't have to like fight them anymore. Yeah. But like the meme coin game is it's very honestly a game of hot potato. It's like, hey, I'm buying this for $1,000. I want to sell it to you for 10,000.
Yeah,
that's my.
I think that's right. It's what I always appreciated about Dogecoin. I wrote a paper in 2021 called Dogecoin, the most honest shitcoin. And that was basically the thesis. I was like, look, it has no pre-mine. It's a fair launch. So that alone, there's no insider. It's proof of work. It's all the basic sort of Bitcoin launch style. And with just none of the pretension, no promises, no grand vision at all. No, not going to be a new Bitcoin. Just a joke. Just exists for no reason at all. And I always respected that about the Doge.
So whereas the other things, like the things that are, trying to appear as though they're real and tangible, like Ethereum, are just getting decimated, right? Somebody said on Twitter today, they said, if Bitcoin is a digital good, does that mean that Ethereum is a digital bad?
I mean, it's been, dude, it's honestly, I'll even throw some sympathy for the Ethereum investors, because I mean, it's down 62% against Bitcoin since the merge. It's still going lower. I even tweeted, I thought that, and I still do think, but again, it's not happening yet for sure, that, like a more permissive SEC is net better for ETH and altcoins than it is for Bitcoin. And so I was like, maybe this is the low, for ETH BTC, and it just has gone lower and lower.
I think
I
the
don't know
thing
anyone. Kobe,
yeah.
you see Kobe's thread today,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
about how
He's
he
the
doesn't
one
own any
making
ETH.
Yeah.
He used to be like an Ethereum influencer.
They're running up against the ceiling, this ceiling of scale, right? So like we're now at an institutional level across the board that you can't find any more retail money to pump this thing. And surprise, surprise, the institutional guys are really fucking smart, and they do their diligence, and they're looking at ETH and they're saying, what the fuck is this for? What is this?
And do you even need the asset? Like,
right,
even if you want to use it, you don't need to store your money in it.
I mean, MSTR, a company that just buys Bitcoin, is kicking the shit out of ETH in terms of performance.
Yeah. What do you think, Saylor? I haven't seen him talk about this yet, but I think he said he's for it. But the strategic Bitcoin reserve. I mean, like
at the end of his Cantor talk, he actually provides the strongest argument for the strategic Bitcoin reserve that I've heard yet. And he basically analogizes it to the way to think about it is, go west, young man, right? Like for a long time in humanity, we just kept moving further west, and then America was the new frontier, and then we colonized America and went to the moon, and fucking all the great things happened, but there's no more space left, and like the edge of the world, California, is in steep decline. So where do you go now? You go to cyberspace. And so buying 1 million or 2 million or 3 million or 4 million Bitcoin, that is equivalent to like a Louisiana purchase or the Alaska purchase. It is one of these buying Manhattan real estate in the early 1600s. Like you want to skate to where the puck is going in the future. And that's the case put forward by Saylor. And I think it's a very strong analogy, because a lot of people say, like, why should we gift the Bitcoin bros this free, transfer from the American tax base directly into their pockets? And it's like, it's not actually about us. We happen to be like barnacles riding on a whale, and we just got here early, right?
Yeah.
And so like you can be mad at the barnacles, but you can't really be mad at the whale, because it's just a force of nature. Bitcoin is just something that's happening. And America is going to have to get on board or get left behind, just like every other individual, corporation, organization on earth and country.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's when I look at what Bitcoin can do in a portfolio, right? When we do this analyses on Sharp, and it's the third best performer of the year on a risk adjusted basis. Also, I mean, on an absolute basis, it's close to the best, if not, it's probably that or MicroStrategy is number one on a risk adjusted basis. Nvidia is number 2, and Bitcoin is number 3. Ethereum is like 25 of the ones that we even looked at, right? I mean, this is looking at all the Mag 7 stocks, all the bank stocks. So banks, top stocks, banks, tech, all the indices, commodities, and fixed income, basically, like not bothering to do like but it's just when you look at that data, we know it's true that like a small allocation in a portfolio can increase the Sharp ratio and uncorrelated. But that holds true for an individual. It holds true for an endowment. It's true for a business. It works in any situation. Like it doesn't matter. You can scale that into like sort of any use. Yeah.
Not only that, Alex, but it is true for the market broadly. So MSTR is, looking at NASDAQ inclusion here. It's coming up shortly. I think next week is when they take the snapshot. And there's a strong possibility that MSTR gets added to the queues, which means if MSTR gets added to the queues, that 400,000 Bitcoin just got added to the queues. So if you're a passive indexer, you are now taking advantage of Bitcoin's, accretive value into the future. I mean, so now every indexer in America and in the world globally, because the queues are a very popular product, is looking at the SBR, if they're smart, and saying, Trump, get it done, because you're pumping all of our bags here.
Yeah, it just makes a lot of sense too. Nation states need like something to store large amounts of wealth in that they can control inside their borders, and that's basically been gold historically. But you can't do anything with gold. You can't even send it. You can barely like settle with gold. You're gonna have to send a warship, right? Didn't like France have to send a warship to pick up their gold in the 1970s after Nixon suspended convertibility? Like
100%.
It's not feasible. It's just like,
well, it's also, Fort Knox is centralized. And so, I mean, I think Fort Knox is pretty well defended, right?
Yeah, I assume so.
The odds of somebody breaking into Fort Knox and stealing all the gold are rare. But what if somebody has a Superman style villain plan? I think Lex Luthor tried to do this in one of the movies where he wanted to irradiate all the gold in Fort Knox, right? So that you couldn't use it, you couldn't go near it. With a strategic Bitcoin reserve, we can do a distributed multisig across America's army bases here on Earth. So it's like, I mean,
Yeah.
if you do a 3 of 5, right? We got a key in Fort Knox, we got a key at Fort Bragg, we got.
I was just going to
it's
ask you
all over.
this, like, how should it be held? Because, you know, some people have wondered with like El Salvador, like, I don't know how they are holding their Bitcoin, but you know, if Bukele were to leave, you of course would want the Bitcoin to stay with the government of El Salvador, like the country, right? Same thing with our, you know, you don't want the president necessarily to have like unilateral ability to move the coins. Like, what would be your ideal multi-sig setup for the government?
Well, we need a 3 of 5 multi-sig, and then there needs to be a series of conditional procedures around that, which is something you can do with hierarchical key control. You know, and there are technologies that enable that, like you know, Miniscript, not to pump my own bags, but I'm an investor.
Anchor Watch,
called Anchor Watch, which is a
Yeah.
new insurance.
we've
company.
had Rob Hamilton on this show, so
Right.
yeah, our
So
audience should know.
they're doing really interesting things, and so I think the way it looks is it's some type of multi-sig with hierarchical key control, and then you know there are on top of that you know nuclear style procedures for who's allowed to operate the keys, when and how, and you know those are all military chain of command things. And then after that, I think we take it a step even further and we time lock the Bitcoin into the future so that greedy politicians can't get their hands on it and sell it, because this is you know the our children, this is their birthright. And
Yeah.
I don't want the next administration coming in and saying, fuck this Bitcoin thing, we're going to dump it all at market, you know.
Yeah. It's like there was this during the great financial crisis, Chicago like sold the revenue for every parking meter in the city.
I
Have
know,
you
and
seen
now
that?
the Saudis or somebody owns it. Like, what
Yeah,
the fuck
for
is
like
that?
100 years. And
Yeah.
they did it for just like a couple $1 billion.
I
And
know.
it's like now they can't, and it screws them up. They can't like do parades at certain, I think if they close a street so cars can't park there, they have to pay
No.
the Saudis what they would have made, like basically in perpetuity for just a couple $1 billion. They did this, and it's like that's your city streets.
Absolute insanity, and it shows the short-sightedness of politicians. And you know, I think that if we are going to analogize it to the Alaska Purchase or the Louisiana Purchase, we wouldn't allow politicians to sell Louisiana. Look how well that worked out for Napoleon. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a good move. So we should put procedures in place, and we can enforce this in code. That's one of the beautiful things about Bitcoin is like we can actually time lock the Bitcoin, and then there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it. It is time locked. Yeah.
It's amazing. I just can't believe that this is like a legitimate, this isn't a crazy conversation we're having right now. This is totally legitimate. It's totally relevant. Yeah, it is. I mean, I was clipping, I watch Bloomberg TV most days, like, cause I have the terminal. So it's open just in front of me. And like, they were on Monday, they were just randomly speculating, the hosts just speculating about the strategic reserve. I clipped that. Like they had like, I mean, multiple times they asked me, I was on there yesterday. They asked me about it. That was like the main alt interest. I chattered a little bit about Bitcoin options on the ETFs, which is the news item. And then there was immediate pivot to the strategic reserve. A friend, a mutual friend of ours called me and was like, hey, great hit, but you weren't even bullish enough on the strategic reserve. And I was like, I literally said every fiat currency in the history of the world has collapsed on TV. And that wasn't bullish enough. It's like,
no, Listen, I'm extremely bullish, and I think that the bull run is, you know, here, you know, and we're about to get through 100K and then 200, 300, wherever it goes. I don't know. But it's like, think about it like we got a bonfire going on in the middle of the forest. We got a little campfire going on, and it's a good campfire. Everything's great. The strategic Bitcoin reserve would be as if, you know, a forestry helicopter came over and dumped kerosene on the entire forest. Okay. Like that is what it is. And it's, dude, the Bitcoin price goes to $1 million overnight. That's just what happens. And $1 million is just the starting point for nation states. Like if you're new here and you're just now getting into Bitcoin, $1 million is where the story begins. We are going to go from $1 million to 20, 30, 40 million. Like Saylor has 13 million. He's been trotting that number out on CNBC. He's being demure when he says that number. That is a small number. That is him being extremely conservative. We're going to $100 million coin.
Wow. You heard it here. That's not, that requires the dollar to be significantly deep, but it will anyway. We know it will. We know for sure. Well, that's not 100. It's not $100 million 2020 dollars you're talking about, is it?
I think well, I did my math a while ago. In 2015, I did my math on Bitcoin. And so I had it going to $50 million in 2015. I've always been exceedingly bullish on this. So yeah, what would that be in, you know, inflated?
I don't know. You don't have to do the math. I'm just saying
Yeah,
the dollar is gonna go down, I think, for it to maybe not dead, but for it to get
Well,
that high. That would be
so
my take.
one of my theses here is that we're going to continue to see liquidity crisis, that the COVID crunch, the V-shaped recovery,
Mhm.
that was not an isolated incident. It's not rare. You can tie it directly back to the interventionism we did at the GFC, and you can tie the things that happened at the GFC to interventionism that took place during Greenspan's tenure. So I think we're going forward in time, and we're going to have increasing liquidity crises, and there's this exponential curve there where the liquidity crises are quicker by order of magnitude, or a doubling, probably quicker by a doubling, and then the amount of monetary stimulus needed to soothe them is also doubled, right? So
Yeah.
you have this exponential in two directions where the time between stimulus is getting lower and the amount of stimulus is getting higher.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, it is one of those tools that gets less effective every time you use it.
Yep.
Always have to use more. There is nothing that stops that train, is there? I mean,
No.
maybe the strategic reserve. It doesn't stop the train. It just gives us more wealth in order to maybe fix it one day. Is that
Yep. Well, that's one of the problems with it too, is it creates wealth inequality, and I think that's part. There's this felt sense that things are deeply unfair, that's been with us ever since the Great Financial Crisis, and that's where we see like these calls for socialism come from. You can basically tie Bitcoin to Occupy Wall Street. I don't know if you were an Occupy guy, but I was an Occupy guy when I was in college. And I was just like, there's something wrong here. Fuck the 1%, fuck the big banks, whatever. But I'm a right libertarian. That's
Yeah.
my, sort of political moral compass. And so I think that we were in alignment with the left and the left libertarians at that time. And then there was a fracturing where we split off and went entirely separate directions. And they were seeking to control the institutions in the state, and we were seeking to build a new economy, right?
Yeah.
And that became Bitcoin. And so I think there's probably like a collision point where we meet up with the socialist and swiftly defeat them, pew, like that. And then we continue on with the digital economy that we've created, which, by the way, is the most multinational, multicultural, multiracial, multi-religious coalition on the face of the earth. I've never seen anything like it. When you're in Bitcoin, you have friends of all stripes. The news media wants to tell you it's a bunch of bro white guys who look like me and Alex, which is true. We're here too, but hey, bro lives matter. But you have friends from all walks of life, and everybody in America is able and capable of benefiting from this. And the sooner you figure it out, the better.
Yeah, it is a truly global movement. When you travel, especially, I mean, I was in Asia, in Singapore and Hong Kong, just absolutely tons of Bitcoiners there, and insane, and everybody. I mean, it absolutely cuts across global and cultural lines. Hodl, for our audience, I think I didn't even really introduce you, but I will, as I think you may know if you're listening now, 25 minutes into the interview. That Hodl is one of the most well-known Bitcoin bulls. I'm going to say he's certainly very well known among Bitcoiners. Gave a great talk at Bitcoin Nashville. You should check out. But maybe Hodl, tell us like how you got. It's the annoying question. How did you get interested in Bitcoin? Give us your OG story here.
So yeah, I'll take it all the way back, and I'll say there were these touchdowns in my life, right? So like when I was 9 years old, I was listening to my grandfather, who was a World War II veteran, tell me about gray market currency trading in Casablanca. Boom, there's a touch point. I moved forward in time. I'm at the great financial crisis with my father sitting at the kitchen table when I'm back home from college. And, basically I'm bemoaning the death of capitalism and how the boomers had it easy and it's going to be hard for me, right? And then boom, I fast forward, and Occupy Wall Street and all that stuff happens. And I go, I'm fucked. We're all fucked. The millennial generation is cursed. We're never going to get out from under this rock that we find ourselves in. And then I walk out of a casino in Christmas 2014, so about 10 years ago. I had won $5,000, and I go, hey, what about Bitcoin? I remembered Bitcoin from when me and a buddy had tried to buy drugs on the Silk Road, but then we chickened out because sending illegal drugs to yourself through the mail was a felony, and I was like, nah, I'm not doing felonies for drugs, man. So then I walked out with the casino money, and I bought Bitcoin the next day, read the white paper, went down the rabbit hole, read everything online, became a Bitcoin crazy person. It took over my entire brain, which will happen to almost everybody on earth. And then I started relentlessly stacking. I sold my car, I drove a moped, I brown bagged my lunch. Everywhere I went, everybody made fun of me. I became the crazy Bitcoin guy, and 10 years later, I feel like that quote of Conor McGregor where he's like, I've lost my mind on this game, right? Like I've just totally lost my mind. I'm like Vincent Van Gogh. I'm ready to cut off my ear any second now. So I'm a Bitcoin crazy person. And because I am that way, my portfolio has been doing very well over the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's been undeniably a great trade. And what do you think? What are you going to do with your Bitcoin? Anything?
Yeah.
Like we've talked about this. I get asked this question sometimes, and to be honest, I don't have a great answer, which I think is kind of my answer. What's your answer?
Yeah, so I'll just be straight up here, and I think one of the best uses for your Bitcoin is dynastic wealth. Like I'm extremely pro dynastic wealth. That's not something you're supposed to say. Warren Buffett wants you to sign a fake giving pledge and then give all the money to your children via charity endowments anyway. But whatever, that's not what I'm about. I am about dynastic wealth, and I think space exploration is another good area that we can spend it on. I think tech, AI, capital allocation, future capital allocation. There I believe in Peter Thiel's great stagnation thesis. I think we've been in a great stagnation. I think Bitcoin is an unlock for that capital in order to use it to get over that. Like I align with the EAC guys, which is, effective accelerationism for anybody who doesn't know. There are a bunch of tech guys who are basically saying like, it's either curtains for the world for human beings, like we're going to get killed by AI or nanobot swarms, or we're going to make it out the other side, and we're betting we're going to make it out the other side. So it's an optimistic view of the future. And I think Bitcoin is the capital for the capital allocators of that future. And so that's the answer, is that you're going to have to risk your capital in order to do the things that push humanity forward. I think Elon Musk is a beacon in this regard, and we should all follow his lead.
Yeah, he's been super involved, and I can't believe the amount of involvement he had in the Trump campaign. And he said, right, like he put it all on the line, dude. Like if Trump had not won, like they were going to go after, I bet he wouldn't be in charge of Tesla or SpaceX or the Boring Company within like a couple years. Like they were going to go after him.
There's a parallel there with Bitcoiners because we didn't want to be involved in this political election either because, first of all, most Bitcoiners are extremely wary of the state. The state has grown to a degree that it's, a narco tyranny, basically, which means the state is powerless to help you, but not powerless to harm you. And so we've been living under that for the last however many years, 8 years or something like that. And we didn't want to be involved either. But I think we got involved for the same reason Elon got involved, which is this election was in our way. It was in our way to our goals. Our goal, Bitcoinized future. And then we meet up with Elon in space, right? Elon's goal, get to space, right? Like our goal, fix the money, fix the world. Elon's goal, get us off the planet. So like Elon's thinking about the interplanetary, redundancy that humans need to survive, and we're thinking about beautifying life here on Earth for human beings. In the Garden of Eden, which is planet Earth.
It's a match made in heaven. He and Vivek are gonna lead the Doge. I could not help the Department of Government Efficiency, not an actual department, by the way. You do, I think, need an act of Congress to create a government department. But I was thinking about his tweet a couple years ago where he said that the most entertaining outcome is the most likely. And I'm just looking at this Doge, and he's posting memes of like government seals that say like Department of Government with a Shiba Inu, like. That guy is he the most legendary innovator builder, company builder in human history? I mean, is this like we don't get folks like him very often.
Elon, when Elon comes to your special thing, this happens a lot. Like he came to Bitcoin and sort of mucked his way around and like didn't really know what he was talking about. And like it kind of pissed me off, and I think it pissed a lot of us off. But when Elon does the other things, the rockets and the whatever, it's very easy to love what he's doing for humanity because listen, like I don't care if you don't like his tweets. I couldn't give a shit less. This man caught a rocket the size of a Saturn V with little tiny metal chopsticks. Like I want more humans who are like that, and I want our culture to celebrate that, and I want to allocate capital to the type of young guys who are going to be like that in the future. So if you are one of those guys and you're listening to me and you're like, I missed out on Bitcoin. First of all, you didn't. There's still time. But second of all, you want to start the next great American company like a Tesla or a SpaceX, let me know. I will fund you.
I love that. He was not afraid to fail, right? There's a great documentary about it on Netflix I saw, all just the crash rockets. I mean, they crashed so many rockets. NASA never wanted to crash a rocket, so they couldn't innovate. Like they were so, I mean, it makes sense. The government agency, if they show failure, they're going to cut the funding or whatever. but
Totally.
he just like plowed forward. I mean, hundreds of failed rockets in order to get where he is now. And now, I mean, there's nobody else that can even compete at the moment, right? I mean, they sent the Boeing one went up, and the guys they're stuck up there right now because they used Boeing instead of SpaceX.
Yeah.
It's
No,
crazy.
I unapologetically love Elon. I love what he stands for. He's the Howard Hughes of our time, except without being crazy. So, or at least not debilitatingly crazy. He's
Yeah, I mean, he
normal
seems
crazy.
functional. He seems
Yeah.
functional, definitely. I don't know how he does it. He's playing Diablo. He's uploading videos.
I know he's like the best Diablo player in the world or
I
something.
think he's like top
number
20 or
20.
something. Truly,
Yeah,
he's the
yeah.
only American or something in the top
It's all
20.
Korean guys and him.
I mean, honestly, it's a wild tale. I mean, you couldn't write a character like this. It's truly unbelievable. So when you think about where we're headed with Bitcoin, is there, there was that great post, there was that dystopian post on Reddit, I'm here from the future and telling you to
Bitcoin
stop.
time traveler.
Yeah, the Bitcoin time traveler. Can you maybe summarize what that is? But also, what does it look like to you sort of when we get there?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think Bitcoin is a dystopia, nor do I think it's a utopia. When you're new in your Bitcoin journey, it's seductive to think it could be a utopia, but utopias don't exist because humans don't like them. Every time we find a utopia, we destroy it because we can. That's what we do. That's who we are, right? It's like that's the story of the Garden of Eden. That's an ancient story, and we're going to keep doing that through time immemorial. If you found yourself in heaven, you would be bored out of your mind because everything would be just simply too good, right? So yeah, there are no utopias when it comes to humans. But what I think is that Bitcoin is going to the digital economy, the Bitcoin economy is going to take over the world, as we're already seeing slowly. And when it does, I think we're going to be able to increase global GDP, by a couple of percentage points, which is like it doesn't sound like a lot, but over time is compounded annually. The CAGR on a couple of percentage points increased GDP gets us to space exploration and life extension technologies and AI and nanobot and just a post scarcity world is where we're trying to go. That's where we're trying to head. We don't want to be humans trapped here on Earth having resource wars with each other. That's antiquated and seems stupid when we are like at the cusp, of maybe becoming a Kardashev type 1 civilization, right? Like maybe that's a couple hundred years in the future, but Bitcoin is a 1,000-year project. So I feel like I have carte blanche to talk crazy shit about space,
Yeah, I think you do. I think it's fair. I love that the scarcest asset ever created is going to help us get to a post-scarcity world. I think that's
Right.
a fascinating idea.
Yeah. When you have scarcity in money, you don't have scarcity in other goods and services. It's kind of a crazy concept when you flip it around like that.
Yeah, I think well, I mean, and you can save, right? I mean, that's the other do you subscribe? I think obviously Saifedean Amos is deserves credit and is the sort of popularizer of the idea that there are downstream effects from inflation that you may not think of.
Right.
It's not just that goods get more expensive, it's that actually goods get crappier, right? That houses get made with worse materials, right? Like
Yeah.
this idea you get a 30-year mortgage, most houses are made with crappy vinyl siding now that will be degraded by the time you pay off the mortgage, right? Like that we don't build with stone anymore, right? Like to me, someone was like, what would you sell your Bitcoin for? And I was like, look, I don't know, but if I did, like if I sold Bitcoin to buy a house, that house better be made out of brick or stone. Like I'm not buying I'm not trading my hard money in for soft, soft commodities, right? Do you ascribe to that? And also, do you
100%.
think that it like takes the need away to invest? I mean, I've heard people argue, I don't really agree with this, but because you can save in what is effectively deflationary money, right? That goods get cheaper relative to your savings rather than the other way around. You're not forced to go chase like a real interest rate bearing or beating, investment. Like, does it create a saver culture
I think
against
you don't
investment
have to
culture,
be,
or how does it alter the investment landscape like that?
well, you don't have to be as far out on the risk curve, right? So like, the Bible's recommendation for your wealth is keep a third of your money in gold, keep a third of your money in your business, and keep a third of your money in your land, right? So like, that's actually a pretty simple methodology for the average person. I think it's kind of criminal that you go to like med school for 8 years or 12 years or whatever to become, like a cardiothoracic surgeon. And then like in your off time, instead of focusing on cardiothoracic surgery, which is what we as a society want you to be doing so that you're a kick-ass surgeon who can, heal ourselves and the people we love, that you're forced into, becoming like a, low level investment, banker, which is like, that makes no sense to me. And I don't think it makes sense to anybody else. So you should have a deflationary currency where you can store the, fruits of your labor and your time and your capital. And you shouldn't have that inflated away from you in what is effectively a stealth tax without representation. I mean, it is literally the thing that we started a revolution in this country for. Why we threw tea in the harbor is because we were getting taxed without representation. Inflation is taxation without representation, right? So it's abysmal. It's abominable. We hate it. It's antithetical to the American spirit, and it's destroying our society, not just here, but globally. It's worse for everyone else, everywhere else on earth, right? And so I think that we shouldn't ask, regular people to go out and become investors, because being an investor is actually a very difficult job that takes a lot of due diligence, and it's a full-time profession, right? And if you want to do that in order to earn more capital, that's fine, but it shouldn't be the default in order for you to live a good life. And so, yeah, inflation affects your mind. Inflation, the dollar or Bitcoin, these are measuring tools, right, that you can use by which to figure out correct economic calculation in the market economy. And imagine if you were building a home, and every night, as you were trying to build the home, some goblin, like a little crazy goblin, came through and just like fucking replaced all the tape measures and all the rulers. That is effectively what inflation does. And you would assume that a home built with, constant different measurements, it would be pretty wonky and lopsided and uneven. And that's the American economy. That's the global economy. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I think correct economic calculation is the thing that's going to get us to increase the GDP and then go to the stars. Like, that's the flywheel here.
What are you most excited about over the next 6 months? Even, like, is it SBR? Is that what's got you most excited now about?
Yeah, I mean,
where we're headed?
The SBR is huge. That is huge if that happens. I'm tracking that like a hawk. And then I think the bull run in general is here. Bitcoin is going to go to 200, 300, 400K next year, like even without the SBR, possibly higher. I think that we had a bad cycle last time around, right? Like, the cycle was just kind of meh. There was a lot more activity happening in shitcoins actually than there was in Bitcoin. And Bitcoiners made money. I mean, it was still pretty good. I think it was like 20x from bottom or something like that. So like, hey, like, we're complaining about it 20x. But we've also, if you've been around Bitcoin for a long time, you've seen it do 100x. You've seen it do 200x. And I think that we're kind of overdue for a cycle like that, which sounds crazy when you're sitting at $94,000. But Bitcoin is going to go to numbers that just simply don't make sense. The other thing I am excited about is MSTR. I think MSTR is going to be incredibly performant, possibly even more performant than Bitcoin over the next 12 months, which is something I expect. And I think the appropriate place for that is in retirement accounts. So like, if you're a Bitcoiner, I would buy spot Bitcoin, raw Bitcoin first, take it into self-custody, cold storage. And with your retirement money, I would buy some MSTR or some IBIT or some FBTC. There are other instruments available to you. But to me, I think what Saylor is building is incredibly impressive. And he's actually, people talk about the premium. There's a lot of talk about, like, because it's trading at 3x the Bitcoin holdings, right? But I think the premium is valid because of the amount of financial engineering that Saylor is doing, that he's finding products that, like the institutional bond market actually wants. And that's a rare thing. And the bond traders right now are pricing like a $620 MSTR price with the most recent converts. And, it's currently sitting at whatever, 450 or something. I don't know where we're at right now while we're recording it, but I mean, do the math, right? So like, yeah, those are the things I'm excited about. And then, in general, just excited to continue to spend time with family and friends, because at the end of the day, money is bullshit. And like, me and Alex like to get drunk when we go to conferences. Maybe I shouldn't say that. This is Alex's job, but we do like to get drunk. It's fun. So I'll see Alex at the next thing. We'll get pretty drunk.
I don't know when I'm going to see you next, but I know that for sure you'll be at Bitcoin 2025.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to see you there. And Hodl, thank you so much for coming on Galaxy Brains. American Hodl. I think you're American Hodl 8 now on
Yes.
X.com. You've gone through several iterations of the handle, but
and you got to shed your skin like a snake, bro. Just keep evolving.
We'll follow him there. And Hodl, thank you so much for coming on Galaxy Brains.
Thanks for having me, man.
That's it for this week's episode of Galaxy Brains. Thanks to our guest, American Hodl. Check him out on Twitter, American Hodl 8. and our good friend Bim Nadabibi from Galaxy Trading, as always. Everyone have a safe and happy weekend, and we will catch you next week. Thanks for listening to Galaxy Brains, the weekly podcast from Galaxy Research. If you enjoy the show, please like, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To follow Galaxy Research, sign up for our weekly newsletter at gdr.email, read our content at galaxy.com/research, and follow us on Twitter at GLXY Research. See you next week.